Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. Week 4 coming up in pro football. It's been crazy so far. 3 undefeated teams, 4 winless teams. But let's start with a little college football first. Colorado and USC play early Saturday morning. Maybe a little bit of the enthusiasm and excitement about the Buffaloes is worn off now after they got blown out at Oregon. Really weren't in that game at all. I think Oregon could have even scored more points if they wanted. But they play an early game. And I know you and I have kind of talked about these early games sometimes favor the visitor. Southern Cal is a 3-touchdown favorite here against the Buffaloes.
Yeah, and you got a unique situation here. Obviously, we talk about Colorado and all the hype and the way that they go into Oregon and just get really beat up in Oregon. And now it's the Deion Sanders. What does he do to get that team back up? And with an opponent like USC coming to town, obviously it's a quick turnaround to play Oregon and USC back-to-back. But Colorado gets them at home. You talked about them being a big underdog. Unique thing here, since Colorado has joined the Pac-12, they haven't beaten USC. USC is 11-0 straight up against them, 7-4 against the spread. In Colorado, USC is 6-0, but only 3-3 against the spread. So taking that 21 points and maybe hoping that Colorado has a little bit of a rebound game with some big energy, big effort. But you talked about that 9 o'clock influence. We talked about that in Clemson and Florida State last week. It allows the road team to come in that night before, get the game underway, and not have to sit around all day on a Saturday for that late game. So USC wants to get in there. They did it last week. They had to go to Arizona State. Didn't cover against Arizona State. So we'll see if they can come back and get a cover this week.
I think what's unique, though, is when Colorado went to Oregon was 6th in the country in yards per play. So defensively, they were much more stout than Southern Cal. I mean, Arizona State really was able to move the ball pretty freely against that Trojan defense in the late game on Saturday night. So can Shedeur Sanders and can Colorado's offense kind of generate anything against Southern Cal to stay within the number? And I agree with you. I think after Colorado gets beat like that at Oregon, if you're Deion, I mean, it's kind of circle the wagons right now, right? These are the 2 games that everybody was saying, hey, you're going to get blown out against Oregon and Southern Cal. Here's a chance now to kind of redeem yourself somewhat and play a really good game against the Trojans.
Yeah, and I think that what we're seeing is they have to be able to stay in games offensively. Didn't expect them to go up to Oregon and not score as many points as they did. So they're going to have to score points. If the defense does, can hold this USC team to a 45-point, the likelihood that Colorado offense should rebound and be able to score 24 points to keep them in the spread is highly likely. And I do expect that this offense will be able to move the football in that UFC defense.
Yeah, just based on what we've seen, I would say so. I mean, Sanders has kind of dropped out a little bit of the Heisman chase, but if he throws for 400 or 500 yards here and this is a shootout and puts 5 touchdowns on the board, I think his name gets back in the discussion somewhat.
Well, when you talk about that Heisman chase, I mean, Caleb Williams is right at the top of the list, and obviously what we saw Michael Penix and Washington do Saturday night is absolutely fantastic. So Sanders is taking a large leap back because of the performance of those quarterbacks, as well as the performance of those teams with them keep winning in big fashion.
I think a new prop should be, will somebody from the Pac-12 win the Heisman or from every place else in the nation?
Well, they would definitely be favored as the Pac-12.
Yep,
with Williams and Penix, the way they're playing and their path to continue to put up large offensive stats and the ability for those 2 teams to stay in the playoff hunt, which I still think is a big deal. To win a Heisman, your team's got to be successful, and I think both those 2 teams have a chance to be successful alongside their success.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the best quarterback conference in the country right now. Another game we want to touch on in college football would be number 10 Utah and 19 Oregon State. Oregon State running back Fenwick rushed for 101 yards and 3 scores, becoming the first Oregon State player to do so against a ranked opponent last week. Wasn't a great outcome for them. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I mean, Utah continues to leave us hanging with the question mark of Cameron Rising at quarterback, and they've been able to win games without him. He's obviously an NFL prototypical quarterback that can go and have success at the next level. And each
but
week
again,
we're
another
kind of
Pac-12 quarterback we're talking about.
We're left handicapping whether he's going to play or not. He's been practicing with Utah, but has yet to step on the field in a game. He's a big influence in their offense and what they can do. And Utah consistently year after year is in this mode of being at the top of the Pac-12. Oregon State, this is somewhat unfamiliar territory. A monster loss for them last week at Washington State. So we'll see how they rebound. And obviously going up up to play the Beavers is always difficult heading up to Corvallis.
Yeah, I think this week, you look at the college football slate, and these are kind of the two marquee games. Last week we were so fortunate. I think there were 7 really, really good games, highlighted by the games that we kind of mentioned, and also the Ohio State Notre Dame game that was pretty exciting in the last minute of that game.
Well, it's exciting depending on who you were cheering
Right.
for. I guess if you were a Notre Dame fan, which several of you were, a lot of money on that Notre Dame
On the money line,
on the money line
Right.
that ended up losing for you. And I still think both those teams did enough to keep themselves in that playoff conversation. Notre Dame with a 3-point loss, although it did occur at home. If Ohio State continues to run the table and Notre Dame can take care of business, maybe a 1-loss Notre Dame will have a conversation piece there. But this week, there's still some other good games. Georgia at Auburn. This Georgia team has really owned Auburn, 6-0 straight up in their last 6 games. The under, strangely enough, or Auburn and Georgia, 8-2 in the last 10. So
Right.
maybe something to look for there. LSU 10-3 straight up against Ole Miss. Playing this week. Washington and Arizona. Again, we talked about the Huskies and the job that Michael Penix and that offense has been doing. They're almost a 3-touchdown favorite on the road at Arizona, where that's been a very good situation for them. On the road at Arizona as a double-digit favorite, the Washington Huskies are 4-0 against the spread.
I can see that, Washington and Fresno will be 2 late plays for you guys on Saturday night.
Yeah, that combination. USC didn't get there for them this past Saturday, but USC to Fresno to Washington State, all big favorites.
Yep.
All big favorites again, although USC plays in the morning. But that evening slate didn't turn out too
Right.
well for us last week, as Washington and Fresno both covered easy.
Before we jump into the pros in our next segment, our last man standing for college saw a huge drop-off with the number of upsets last week. There are 627 contestants left in last man standing, so only through a few weeks right now, but it's really had a significant drop over the last 2 weeks.
Well, not only last man standing, which involves the point spreads, but you look for those big teams, and specifically in the NFL, it was Baltimore falling
Right.
to the Colts, the Jaguars falling to the Texans, and then probably the
We'll
biggest
get to
surprise
the
from all
NFL,
of the Cowboys to the Cardinals. But that then takes a lot of people out of
Right.
our last man standing pool.
So again, some really good games in college football Saturday. It kicks off
UNLV
early.
Hawaii.
Yeah.
One last one, UNLV Hawaii.
UNLV is a double-digit favorite. Wait, when was the last time we said UNLV is a double-digit favorite? Not in basketball, but in football. It's been a long time.
Odom's done a great job with
Yes.
the guys and a couple big wins, and they're 6-2-1 in their last 9 games against Hawaii against the spread. So they've had some success against this Hawaii club.
It's funny, but now that UNLV is playing a little bit better football-wise, they kind of fall into that same category with the Aces, the Raiders, the Knights, where you guys are really backing UNLV a lot. I think anytime, especially when you can go to a game out here, it just kind of adds to that. So we've seen a lot of UNLV football play, which wasn't always the case over the last 10 years
Well, I think
or so.
Vegas likes to back winners. And when you're able to win games, you're going to find more betting money on you. And obviously the success that they had in pulling the upset against Vanderbilt and then beating San Antonio.
Texas State, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to find, the Texas State beat Nevada. But you're going to continue to see more
Right.
money rolling. And if they cover against Hawaii, we'll
Right.
continue to see more play on them in conference play.
Yep, don't forget, 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, Colorado, Southern Cal, marquee early game that kicks off this Saturday. That kind of wraps up the college slate so far for Bookends. We'll come right back with the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends, and dive into the big boys, pro football.
Guess what? It's football season, baby. And you know what that means. It's time to bet your buns off. And when it comes to sports betting, you better bet with the STN Sports app. I'm talking football, all the fights, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer ball. We've got it all. And with our 14 convenient sign-up locations around town, it's no wonder they call me the Queen of Convenience. Because when I bet with STN, I feel like royalty. So what in the heck are you waiting for? Download the STN Sports app today and trust the local favorite.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rock with the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends to dive into a little bit pro football. Jason, Chucky, I think the first question that someone has asked us, will the Chiefs games be more high profile now, and what will the impact be of T Swift? I think for me, I'm just waiting for what's the next song, that kind of impacts how the Chiefs play.
Well, I know his jersey sales spiked. I'm not sure how Taylor Swift influences Travis Kelce jersey sales, but I still think the best Swift-Kelce combo is in Philadelphia. Swift has been running the football, and Jason Kelce's been blocking. That's been the better combination for me.
I like that.
We'll see how long the Taylor Swift,
maybe
Travis
that'll
Kelce,
be the song.
Yeah, that combination happens.
The best Swift Kelce combinations in Philly. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, on a serious note now. All right, so we had some teams that got beat up bad last week. Who's the most embarrassing loss? That was a question that was proposed. Is it the Cowboys who lost to the Cardinals? Is it the Bears that lost again to the Chiefs? But Chiefs are a very good team. Or is it the Denver Broncos who lost to the Miami Dolphins? I think for me, it's Denver. All these teams are at the bottom. Two of them are not the Cowboys. But I think you look at Denver, and they got beat by 50. They gave up 70, the most points that have been given up in a game since 1966. Defensively, they just got ran over in every aspect of the game. Yet, if you're a Bears fan, you are an underdog of 3 points at home to this Bronco team that just gave up 70. So maybe it's the Bears, but for my money, I think it's the Broncos, although the Cowboys had a very embarrassing loss as well.
Yeah, I think from an embarrassing loss, using that word embarrassing, giving up 70 points there's got to be nothing more embarrassing. I think from a Broncos standpoint, from a surprising standpoint, and I guess you could put surprising and embarrassing somewhat maybe the same word, but the way the Dallas Cowboys had looked through 2 weeks to then go to Arizona, who was 0-2 after losing a 20-point lead to the Giants the week before, for Dallas to not only lose that game, but to really, they got beat up. I mean, the Cardinals were the better team on the field the whole game. It wasn't like it was a fluke situation.
They had the most yards per rush in that game, more than any other team in the league outside of the Dolphins. So you think about that vaunted Cowboy defense that had been so dominant and had outscored their first two opponents so much that they got dominated by a Cardinal team that really isn't that good.
Yeah, well, but are they? I mean, we'll see. They in week one, they were in a tough game with the Commanders that they ended up losing. Obviously, a 20-point lead against the Giants in week two, and now we see. And remember, Dobbs they picked up from Cleveland 3 weeks before the season started. He looks like he's playing better. They do have some tools. We were expecting them to be in tankathon, trying to get the number one pick and not wanting to win games.
Speaking of that.
So much so that, when they had the lead at halftime, we were thinking, well, they're going to go back in and do exactly what they did for the Giants game to remind these guys that we want to get the number one pick and we're not supposed to win in these second halves. But maybe the Cardinals have something going, and don't sleep on the Cardinals. And one last word on the Bears is, and I'm not going to put anything embarrassing on the Bears because this has been 12 years running, so nothing they do surprises me. And to be an underdog at home to a team that just allowed 70 points tells you where the Chicago football franchise is at.
13 straight losses. Each one of those losses, they gave up 25 points or more. That's the reason they're a 3-point underdog at home to a team that just got lit up for 70 points. I think, but if you're a Bear fan, I know you talked about the Cardinals and Caleb Williams. There are four winless teams right now. Two of those teams, the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears. The Bears own the Carolina Panthers' number one pick. So if it doesn't correct itself, and if Fields doesn't get hot, start to play well, if they end up going to Tyson Bagent and it's not the answer, you've got a real shot in arguably one of the richest quarterback draft classes that we're going to see in a long time to kind of correct that mistake.
Well, and we had heard several chatter over the last 3 weeks about Caleb Williams saying that if he got drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, he might just elect to stay into college because he doesn't want to go to that organization. We could have the same quarterbacks or somebody saying the same thing about the Chicago Bears, because I'm not sure
it's a big market.
Anybody would want to go there right now with the fact that you can't win on this team and you can't have success with this team.
We'll see.
You can feel my upset passion as a Chicago Bears
like my
fan.
son, man.
I'm crying in my suit.
Totally,
it's so frustrating from a Bear fandom standpoint to watch the product on the field and just the underperformance and the inability to move the football, play defense, blocking and tackling. It's not there, and it's extremely frustrating from that standpoint.
Bear win this Sunday. All right, Thursday Night Football. We're going to stay in the NFC North. Packers-Lions. Both teams have a number of injuries, but I really think the impact for the Packers is much greater. I mean, Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, Bakhtiari. I think those are really big injuries that they have. They've got some injuries on the defensive side too. But, without those two guys on offense, I think it really affects a young quarterback like Jordan Love.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly who the Green Bay Packers are at this point. We talked about at the beginning of the season, can Jordan Love lead this team with Aaron Jones getting hurt after week one, and he was his main receiver in week one,
right,
and no Watson to go to. We've seen sprinkled in of Musgrove and Dobbs and Reed.
Jalen Reed
has now performed, but really not a lot out of Dillon out of the backfield. And they were really getting dominated by the Saints last week at home until Carr got hurt, and they were able to kind of find themselves back in the game and able to go back and steal the win there. And obviously, big familiarity with the Lions and Packers. They played each other twice a year. The Lions, the big upset last year.
The last game of the regular season, Sunday night.
Get into the playoffs. But big familiarity. Montgomery could be back for the Lions this week, which I think is a big piece of their offense of wanting to split carries between Gibbs and Montgomery. And obviously, you always have to be able to cover Amon St. Brown, which the Packers have struggled to do in the past.
So I'm going to ask a question that I couldn't really find the answer to. When was the last time the Detroit Lions were the favorite in Green Bay? I mean, it has been forever when you really think about it. And I'm going to throw out through the show, we're going to kind of sprinkle in some interesting tidbits too, gaming tidbits. And Detroit now the Lions are 10-0 against the NFC North over their last 10 games. So kind of impressive, and I think that's the reason that you've seen this game kind of get bet up a little bit, where the Lions are a 1.5 point favorite. I do think if Watson and Jones both play, you may see this game come down a little bit.
Yeah, and the early Thursday game is going to make it even harder for those guys to get back on the field. Jones has been working through stuff. He was still limited in practice time on Monday and Tuesday, and he's the bigger deal for me. Obviously, Watson coming back gives them a big potential of a wide receiver, but what Jones is able to do out of the backfield and catching the ball out of the backfield is that safety blanket for Love, and Jones is the bigger deal. If he's back on the field, I think it definitely switches back to the Packers being the favorite.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd agree with that. One more question before we kind of dive into the games is, what was kind of the toughest loss for Pro Football and LMS, Last Man Standing, last week? And I think, when you look at teams like the Ravens, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, they were all really tough losses for contestants that have that. But when you talk about the top 5 teams in the league, the Dolphins, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Bills, and the Chiefs, I think everybody would be in agreement that those are the dominant teams right now. When you look at our AFC, NFC prop, it's based on some combination of those two leagues. Guess what, gang? Those 5 teams all got there really easily. So although there is some sort of a separation, I think, from the top to the next level, the top 5 dominant teams easily covered in every way they could last week.
Yeah, and the knockouts were, you talked about the 3 big upsets, the Houston going into Jacksonville as a touchdown dog and winning, the Colts going into Baltimore as a touchdown dog and winning, and then obviously the Cardinals as a 12-point underdog beating the Cowboys. And then the last one that a lot of last man standings were knocked out on was our Las Vegas Raiders as a short 2.5-point favorite at home against the Steelers. That had a lot of people on that side betting on the Raiders this week.
So we're going to kind of dive into some of the games right now, guys. So Falcons-Jags, it's an early kickoff on Sunday. Don't forget to set your alarms. This game's in London, so an early kickoff, not your 10 o'clock kickoff.
Get up and have your fish and chips and watch the game in London.
Come over to Red Rock and hang out and have some fun. So are we concerned about what happened last week for the Jags? And for me, I am a little bit. I think coming into the season and being able to build on their success last year, Trevor Lawrence would be his 3rd year. We've talked about before Josh Allen and Diggs, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, even Justin Fields and getting D.J. Moore. But it was Ridley going now to the Jags to help out Trevor Lawrence. But they just have looked out of sync all year. They haven't looked great, and they didn't just lose that game. They got beat pretty good by the Texans.
Yeah, for me, this is 2 teams that have one that has a quarterback issue. Ritter in Atlanta is not going to be a long-term answer for them, in my opinion. They really struggle to move the ball through the air. They're really reliant on Algier and Robinson out of the backfield, or the short passing game out of the backfield to those guys. There's really been no downfield threats to Drake London or Kyle Pitts. But the real question mark here is what's going on in Jacksonville. Houston has played them consistently tough. If you look over the last 6 games. I think Houston's 7 games. I think Houston's actually 6-1 straight up against this Jacksonville Jaguar team. But this was a Jaguar team that won a playoff game.
Right.
Doug Peterson had gone down there. Trevor Lawrence looked fantastic last year with Kirk and Jones and Etienne out of the backfield. And now you add Calvin Ridley to that, and it seems that this offense has taken a step back. Ridley's dropped outside of week 1. Ridley's dropped several balls. It was really Christian Kirk that had the good game in week 2. But they only scored 9 points at home against the Chiefs, and obviously then the underperforming game here. I do think there's a chance that Jacksonville is going to explode one week. They have way too many offensive weapons not to put up the big points, and there is the motivation factor for Calvin Ridley this week, who gets to go up against his former mates in the Falcons. So if there's any extra motivation this week for the Jaguars, who the Jaguars is also, they love going to London.
It's a home game for them.
This is their home game. This is been on their kind of schedule. Any chance they get a chance to go to London, the Jags want to go. So if there's any spot to look for and again, everybody's off the Jaguars now after they lose to the Texans, so that line has come down even further than what it would have been just a week ago with the non-success of the Jags. So if there's any week that I expect the Jags to play better, it's this week with the extra motivation from Ridley and the back-to-back losses to the Chiefs and Texans. This is a big spot for Jacksonville. If they want to get back in this thing, they have to do it this week. Again, against a Falcon team that cannot move the ball through the air, but I don't know if Jacksonville can stop the combination of Robinson and Algier in that great running game that the Falcons have.
I really love the Falcons' young skill position players, but as you alluded to, the quarterback is really the key factor right there. They're a team that, depending where they finish and what quarterbacks are available through the draft or through a trade, might need to explore that a little bit, because when you've got guys like London and Kyle Pitts that you can't get the ball to, teams are just going to start putting 8 and 9 guys in the box and say that Algier and Robinson, you have to beat us now with a defense like that. I don't think it'll get done. All right, Dolphins-Bills, arguably marquee game of the week. I wish we could flex this early, because that would be the Sunday night game for sure. I know it's Chiefs-Jets, and when the schedule was made, it was Mahomes, Rodgers. It was a sexy game. That isn't the case anymore. Chiefs are a huge road favorite there. But you talk about Bills-Dolphins right now. Both teams come off really impressive wins. Both teams are in our top 5. The Bills are a small favorite here. If you're Miami and you have to go play Buffalo, you love the fact that you are playing them October 1st and not December 15th. It's a huge advantage for Buffalo when that takes place. These two teams split last year, Buffalo winning at home 32-29, Miami winning in Miami 24-19. But Josh Allen had a lot of success in those games. He threw for over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. Tua played in one of the 2 of those games. He's been on fire. The key for Miami, I think, is making sure that Mostert and Tua stay healthy, although Achane had a great game last week. But for me, this is the marquee game of the week. Anxious to see, we're on 3 right now, if you guys push us up or down on this game.
Well, and when I look at the game, I would tell you that the value in this game is on the Buffalo Bills. With the way Miami Dolphins have looked and the fact that they put up 70 points last week, the general sense is that the Dolphins are the hottest team in football. But if you go back and take a deeper look at the picture, obviously they win against the Chargers, who we've seen continue to struggle on the defensive side of the football. Lucky to get out of Minnesota with their first win of the year. They beat the Denver Broncos, who are 0-3, and lost to the Commanders. And so not an impressive Bronco team at all. Their tough game that they did win 24-17 was at New England. So if there's any picture of what potentially they could be looking at, in New England has that better defense, they're going to see that better Buffalo Bills defense. So this is the spot where I think that you have to look to take Buffalo in this spot, but I don't think you want to step in front of the Miami Dolphins kind of train that's rolling right now. This offense is so hot, and if they're going to get Waddle back this week, the ability for this offense to play. And we talked about this going back 5 weeks ago. When Tua's on the field, this offense is dynamic. They're an offense to be afraid of, and they can go the way. It's just how long can Tua stay healthy? How long can Mostert stay healthy, as these guys have continued to show injury prowess throughout their career. But congratulations to the Dolphins on being able to put up 70 points. We'll see if they can bounce back to a quick Buffalo Bills team. And I think the other thing that this does is the Dolphins scoring 70 points, it puts the Buffalo Bills on high alert. Right? That Buffalo Bill defense is going to take exception to Miami puts up 70. We are not going to allow them to put this up on us. So potentially, as much as you look for this to be a high-scoring game with this high-scoring offenses, I would expect that these defenses to be ready to go.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot more pressure on the Bills for this game, because to lose at home, they'd be 2-2 in the division, and then they'd have 2 losses in the division. You'd have a Miami team that was 4-0 then. So, and knowing that they're going to play later in the season in Miami, a lot more pressure on Buffalo for this one.
One last thing, you talked about Devon A-Chain. Who scored the 4 touchdowns for the Dolphins this past week. Backup running back behind Mostert, was behind Wilson on IR. And in their program in Miami, it says Devon A-Chain, and that's how you pronounce it. But after the kid scored 4 touchdowns, he came out and said, "That's not how you pronounce my name. It's Devon Achan." So it's like a telethon, the Devon Achan. But he made a correction. Right. So all of you that have been wondering how to pronounce his name, because I've asked at least 3 times this week as we talked about him in the hub. We talked about him from a fantasy football standpoint. Devon Achan is the young man's name.
With that said, and with you mentioning fantasy football, if he's available in your league and you have the first waiver claim, go out and get him now, because he's going to be the hot guy everybody wants to pick up. NFC North, Eagles, Commanders. For me, the Eagles still haven't played a great game. They just look so-so. I'm not sure A.J. Brown has a touchdown yet. They've been able to run the ball really successfully with DeAndre Swift. Defensively, they look really good. Jalen Hurts has got that, I think he's got 4 touchdowns now that are all that big push that they, get him into the end zone. But they haven't played a great game. The Commanders they were 2-0 going into last week, got beat up at home by Buffalo. But you look at this team, and they've got a lot of young skill position players. Sam Howell threw 4 interceptions. I think they were more of a mirage than anything else. I think it's a good spot for the Eagles maybe to get rich here and really start getting that offense on track a little bit.
Yeah, if you want to call them the boring Eagles, call them the boring Eagles, and they'll be happy because they're still 3-0 and continuing to roll up the yards. It looks like Swift and that offensive line just absolutely fantastic. They're just able to get big chunk yards in the running game. You can't stop them on a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1
right.
With Hurts and that backwards push.
I think
from behind
with that
him.
They are now 39 out of 41. I don't even know the 2 that they missed. I can't remember when it was.
It's an unbelievable play. I know they talked about it from outlawing it as we were going into this season, but the Eagles work it to perfection, and the defense is standing up. I mean, it's kind of a bend but not break. Watch them get the turnovers. They were able to turn over Mayfield on Monday night and kind of just push them through that game. And you talk about this Commander team coming in. They were 2-0 heading into their game against Buffalo. They were the sexy pick, kind of getting a touchdown at home against the Bills. Obviously beating the Cardinals and beating Denver in Denver the week before that. And obviously those, what the Broncos have become. You can see why Washington. But this could be a quick fall for the Washington Commanders, as this looks like a tough trip to Philadelphia.
Yeah, again, I really do like their young skill position players, but Sam Howell has to protect the ball better. Now from the category of coaches, what in God's name are you thinking? And it's the Chargers and the Raiders. So the Chargers winning by 4 on their own 23 with less than a few minutes to go in the game. Go for it. Don't get it, yet still win. The Raiders trailing by exactly 8. Since the 2-point conversion was instituted, no team has ever, let me say that again, has ever tried to kick a field goal in that situation when you're down by exactly 8. There's less than 3 minutes to go in the game and 5 yards or less to get a first down or touchdown. And the Raiders didn't only do it once, they did it twice. I just don't get it. Analytics is such a big part, even in our world now. We look at from the analytics side of, everything that we do. And, in pro football, there's analytics guys that I guess are in coaches' ears, I would think. And yet one coach went for it that probably shouldn't. One coach kicked a field goal that probably shouldn't. And it worked out for one coach and it didn't for the other. But it's still a little bit of a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, and you could go back, just 2 weeks of the head scratcher of why McVay elects to kick the field goal against the Niners in a non-situation that he needed to kick the field goal. And I think that too much pressure is put on these guys to look in the late game situation of why they did stuff. I think you can look throughout the game and question some of these moves. But Staley going for it on the 4th and 1 from his inside his own 30, up 4. I think what he was trying to say is I'm going to try and win this game with my offense because I don't trust my defense.
But they had to score a touchdown, though, to beat you. That was
if
key.
you punt,
if it was a
you
field
make
goal,
Minnesota go the whole length of the field and score the touchdown.
Right.
Now you give them, a really short field. Still have to go score the touchdown, but we've seen Cousins and the ability to cover Justin Jefferson and Hawkinson. It's not easy from that standpoint, and I really think they kind of lucked out. Hawkinson kind of had that ball, and then the pick went from there, but questionable calls by Staley, and I think that the Raiders was even worse.
But in the Raiders' case, Jay, that if you went for it and you didn't get it,
you still
had to stop them
and get the ball back and score a touchdown.
The scenario wasn't going to change.
I think he was, again, you're leaving the game in that we have to score a touchdown and then we have to score the 2-point conversions and to tie this game up. With the hopes of kicking the field goal, we get the stop, we can then score the touchdown and we win the game versus having to score the touchdown and the 2-point conversion just to keep the game tied. But I think that all of us in that situation, you're going for it, you're looking for the tie, and if you don't get it, you still have to stop them again and try and do it again.
Yeah, just a little bit of a head scratcher. Chargers, unfortunately, it's never really a true home game for them. They take a backseat a little bit to the Rams. Visitors always travel well. Just with the Raiders playing in Oakland and then playing in LA for a while, I'm sure there's going to be a huge contingent of silver and black in LA. Last year, these two teams split. Raiders winning here 27-20, Chargers winning there 24-19. So we'll see what happens, but kind of a big game for both.
And the receiving core, Mike Williams out for the Chargers, hurt his ACL, out for the year. But Davante Adams has been absolutely fantastic. And watching that telecast and when they were talking about what Jimmy G has got in Davante Adams and how he's learning to play with Davante Adams and talking about that he wouldn't be making these throws. He would never make these throws in his career. And now that Davante Adams is on his team, he makes these throws that he just wasn't used to because Davante Adams is such a special player. And then you look on the other side of what Keenan Allen was able to accomplish this week in Minnesota with 18 receptions, throwing a touchdown pass. It's special to be able to see these guys on the field and watch what they're doing. So something to look for this week. We got two aging receivers in Keenan Allen and Davante Adams, but something to enjoy while we can.
Something, too, is that Jimmy G's still in the concussion protocol. We've seen this game tick up a little bit, so keep an eye to see if he is actually going to start. Do they go to Brandon Hoyer? Do they go to the rookie? Interesting stat here, too, is Raiders at the Chargers. 18 of the last 23 times that the Raiders have played as the road team against the Chargers, the game has gone under, so not a lot of scoring in that game.
Yeah, and so I'm somewhat surprised to see the game go to 5.5, and I know that has more to do with the Raiders quarterback question marks, but these teams have consistently played really, really tight games that come down to the wire, and it seems like every Raiders game, it comes down to the wire outside of going up to Buffalo and getting kind of beat up. They play a lot of close games. They're in a lot of tight games, so potentially something to look for here with taking the points. And again, we've not seen the Chargers blow anybody out for quite some time.
So another game to look at quickly, Cowboys-Patriots. Cowboys come off that embarrassing loss against the Cardinals. Patriots were able to beat a team that they've just beaten up lately, and that's the Jets. Cowboys are about a touchdown favorite. Interesting stat here for the Cowboys. Since 2021, coming off a loss, they are 9-1 against the number.
Yeah, the motivation factor is going to be there, and I don't know how much during the week the Trayvon Diggs injury that put him out for the season as they headed into the Cardinals team, I don't know how much that affected the team, or if it's just the fact that they had played so well for 2 weeks that you got your head kind of blown up a little bit, and you thought you were going to be able to walk into Arizona and get a big win, and they were more looking forward and ahead to this Patriot game from that standpoint. So Patriots are not a bad team. We saw them play competitively against, obviously, this incredible Miami Dolphins offense, and then they went into New York, were able to beat the Jets, obviously a team that is offensively deficient with what Zach Wilson and that offense have been able to do. But the Patriots always come prepared to play, being able to get a touchdown at Dallas, but I think you're going to see a big effort here from the Dallas Cowboys. We'll see if that Patriots defense can stand up enough to not allow Dallas to run away with things.
It was another game where, granted, Dallas' defense didn't play well, but Dak Prescott led the league in interceptions last year. They get into the red zone. They're inside the 10, a chance to really put some pressure on the Cardinals and maybe win this game, he throws the interception in the end zone. So we've kind of talked about it going into the year. Dak needs to do a better job of protecting the football.
Yeah, there's not going to be any doubt that the Cowboys are going to play better with the lead than they are chasing. When they're able to put Tony Pollard and make a team come up and try and stop that run game, and then you're able to find CeeDee Lamb and these guys running around the backfield, that's going to be a better situation than when a defense is dropping back into coverage, be able to cover those guys. That's where Dak Prescott has continued to struggle.
So now look at the Sunday night game. It's Chiefs-Jets. As we talked about earlier in the show, when the schedule came out, we were excited about it. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Sunday Night Football, just kind of the whole soap opera of the Jets, being on Hard Knocks was going to be great. Unfortunately, Rodgers isn't there. It's Zach Wilson right now. He's really struggled. Being the number 2 pick in the draft 3 years ago, he's really struggled a lot. They signed Trevor Siemian. That's not the answer. I think at some point, we know the Jets have a great defense. They've got some good young skill position players. How long do they stick with Zach Wilson at quarterback?
Well, a great defense can only do so much. And I was a big fan of the New York Jets and high expectations on the New York Jets heading into this season with Aaron Rodgers and that offense. The offensive line is not good, and they weren't going to be good even with Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So you were hoping Aaron Rodgers' skill set of being able to get the ball out of his hands quickly, diagnose a defense, was going to lead that Jets offense to having some success. And Zach Wilson just can't do that. They picked up Dalvin Cook. Breece Hall was supposed to be playing at a 75-80% range, but with no passing game, Breece Hall's not having success. He's not getting the ball.
There's 8-9 guys in the box.
Dalvin Cook's not having success. Zach Wilson can't get the ball to these guys, and I don't know where the nightmare ends for the Jets on the offensive side of things. The defense can only do so much, and that defense is very, very good. And it's strange to watch Saleh and them come out and say that they're behind Zach Wilson when we clearly wanted to get away from Zach Wilson. That's why he went out and got Aaron Rodgers. Because Zach Wilson wasn't the piece that was going to lead you to continue to back him after what he's shown these kind of now 3 weeks. I know they won the first game against Buffalo and kind of stole that game from them, but now 2 weeks of Zach Wilson really underperforming. You have to ask yourself, what is out there? Who can we go get? Are the 0-3 Minnesota Vikings interested in shopping a Kirk Cousins? Is Kyler Murray out there? Is there a piece? Is there any piece?
Carson Wentz. I mean, there's
we talked about
Colt
maybe Jameis Winston from the
Right.
Saints, and then Carr goes and gets hurt, and now Winston might have to be the starting quarterback for the Saints. But I do expect that the Jets are going to have to make a move here because I think it's going to cost Saleh or that GM their job if they just say we're sticking with Zach Wilson and we're not going to win any games the rest of the year.
I'm surprised it was Siemian. I mean, I know he adds a veteran presence to that quarterback room, and he can be on the practice squad, but he's clearly not going to be the answer. I mean, you have to go out and there's guys like Colt McCoy and Carson Wentz on the couch right now. There's some guys that might be available via trade. I think they have to do something sooner rather than later, because if not, the season's going to get away from them.
Yeah, and this is, an interesting spot with the Chiefs and Jets. Obviously, the Chiefs are almost a double-digit favorite. This Jets defense is really, really good, but it's just a matter of how many opportunities are the Chiefs going to get to score, and how much can the Jets bend but not break? But are the Jets going to go score 14 points or 17 points to potentially get you to cover? Because that's what you're asking that offense to do. You're asking that Jet offense to get me 17 points so that if the defense gives up 27, I can stay in this game and I can cover this game. And the other thing about this Jet offense is they're not only not moving the football, but they're a turnover and a fumble away from giving up points on their own, which is even scarier that they're giving up the points. It's not the defense giving up the points, and now you're chasing, and this Jets team having to chase with Zach Wilson. It's just not a scenario for success.
Yeah, it really struggled on the offensive side. So kind of as we go into the Monday night game and look at the Seahawks at the Giants, a little bit of a scheduling quirk is week 1. It was the New York, and week 4 is New York, meaning that on week 1, Sunday night, was the Giants at home, Monday night, the Jets at home. Week 2, it's the Jets at home on Sunday Night Football, the Giants at home on Monday Night Football. Giants are a small favorite against the Seahawks. That number has started to come down a little bit, which leads you to believe that maybe Saquon Barkley won't play. One of the questions was, is the Seahawks kind of an under-the-radar team? I really don't think so. I think you look at this team, they went out and they drafted Smith and Jigna. They drafted Zach Charbonnet. I prefer a good cab over a Charbonnet, but What? I think offensively they're still really good, but on the back end, their secondary leaves a lot to be desired. So I think they're a good team. I don't think they're a great team, and I think they're a little bit, really, for me, as an underachiever so far early in the season.
Yeah, start with Seattle. Opening home loss to the Rams. That was kind of shocking. It was the come-out party for Kyron Williams and Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua for the Rams. Stafford just picked apart that secondary that you talked about. They go and then steal a game in Detroit as a dog, kind of a bigger upset win after their first loss. Everybody was expecting Detroit after the win over the Chiefs in week 1 for Detroit to roll them. Seattle was able to stand up really well. And then this week they beat a Carolina Panther team, which I think we're going to sit here week after week talking about teams that beat the Carolina Panthers, who just don't have much of an offense to go with. Andy Dalton played well in that game. We saw Adam Thielen have an absolutely fantastic game, again, against this secondary for the Seahawks, which is really susceptible. They're not a good defensive secondary. They've got a good line. They've got some good linebackers, but they can be beat on the back end. But the Giants aren't really a team that has shown that they can take advantage of a poor secondary.
They've been maybe one of the bigger disappointments this year.
Darren Waller was their big off-season acquisition, expected to go in there and make a big difference, catching all these balls from Danny Dimes. He hasn't done so. There's been nothing downfield. It seems like every route the Giants are running is a 5-yard route, turn around with my back, my back to the end zone, and I catch the ball flat-footed and I get tackled. And they have to do that because their offensive line has been so bad. They haven't been able to attack, and then obviously with Saquon Barkley being out, that hurts them even more. But the Giants did have a tougher road. Obviously, the home opener against Dallas, tough game, got away from them quickly.
They did play the Cardinals in week 2 and didn't score in the first half.
They go to Arizona down 20-0, end up coming back and winning 31-28. But 31 points in a second half is an impressive offensive performance. And then I think, with all due respect to having to go to San Francisco on a Thursday after staying out west playing Arizona, that's a really, really difficult game against a talented 49er team that has everything that you can ask of in all facets of the football. They stayed in that game early, but what was really concerning to me from the Giants was the fact that they can't tackle. You watched Christian McCaffrey break tackle after tackle. You watch Deebo Samuel make first contact at the 40. And by the time he was tackled by 6 guys, he was at the opposing 45, 15 yards of breaking tackles, and just missed assignments for the Giants time after time. And maybe because they had the Thursday game and now playing the Monday night game, they've got some time to fix this. I really think Brian Daboll is a fantastic coach for the Giants, but they're missing some pieces of the puzzle. And if Saquon Barkley's not there, I don't know if they're a team that you can put your money on to bet, but I don't think it's a spot where you want to put your money on Seattle, because I think this is a wounded, backs against the wall Giants team that's coming off a bad loss, a bad start to the season, now at home on a Monday night where they lost their home opener 40-0. If this Giants team can't stand up here on a Monday night, this could go really bad really fast for this Giants ball club.
And like I mentioned earlier, we've seen the money start to come in a little bit on Seattle as that number has started to drop a little bit. When you look at the pros too, I know we touched on the college last man standing, a big drop in pros too. There was over 6,300 contestants in it, only 989 left in pro last man standing, and a big part of that was all the upsets we saw last week.
Football's tough. I mean, and the survivor pools, the fantasy, it's a week-to-week league. Things change week to week. You want to try and ride those hot teams, and then all of a sudden they'll throw a clunker in there on you. So that's what makes it so much fun to bet, so much fun to analyze, so much fun to look at every week. And we'll see what craziness happens this week, and maybe we can get the monster upset out of the Jets, and maybe we'll see the Bears. Maybe we'll see the Bears not allow 40 points to be put on the board in their game this week.
Don't forget, gang, again, early kickoff for the Southern Cal Colorado game on Saturday. Really early kickoff for the Jaguar-Falcon game on Sunday. We love it when you guys come out and enjoy everything we have to offer, not only here at Red Rock, but all of our race and sports books. Don't forget to get signed up for STN Sports.
And we're talking a lot of football,
right?
But there's so much other action on the board.
Right.
We've got hockey preseason underway here. Knights are on the board. We've got some incredible baseball pennant races. We're gonna a lot of daytime baseball, but Sunday's the end of regular season, and we'll be going into the playoffs. So lots to look for there. tons of soccer on the board, UFC, boxing. I mean, this is one of those great times of year as we move into October, into November, where we've got everything playing. Start doing your NBA
Canelo
handicasting.
and Charlo fighting this weekend.
I mean, it's a loaded board. Get the app so that you have everything at the palm of your hand, and you don't have to run down to the book. You just get on the app and be able to place your bets.
Real quick, one more thing. I know when you guys are out here on the weekends, our books are packed, which is great. The atmosphere is super cool. But don't forget, there's kiosks located all around our books at all the properties. Super easy to use, super quick. One of our team members can always show you and help you with those. But the kiosks are a really quick way to maybe avoid the line, make your bets, and enjoy everything else while you're in the sports book. So for Jason, I'm Chucky. We're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. It's going to be a packed weekend. Good luck this weekend, and we'll see you guys next week on the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookend.